Welcome, Matt, to, as we just said, the beginning session of the Founders Podcast. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got here, just a little, 2 minutes of who you are and the organization.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here in the Computer History Museum in the heart of Silicon Valley. I actually grew up quite a ways from here, outside of Detroit, and had an interest in systems design engineering from my earliest days. Actually started my career building instrumentation systems for America's Cup boats. So I was in the professional sports world for a while, and then ended up out in Silicon Valley about 10 years ago. Got into cloud computing very early on, building a weather API business for Weather Underground. So if you've seen weather on your phone, I built the API that makes that all happen. Then went to a company called Heroku that was eventually bought by Salesforce, and I was there for a little while. And then was part of the pivot at Microsoft as they were pivoting Azure from a platform as a service that was specifically built around Windows. And when Satya took over and wanted to support open source applications on the Azure platform and infrastructure, they built out a small team to figure out how to go do that. I was part of that. And then about 2 years ago, I started Occam to solve this problem of security in edge devices.
Okay, that's good. Why did you do that? I mean, the founders wired differently, so you had a nice secure situation going on, and then you said, okay, I'll just step out of that.
Yeah, I probably do it because it's difficult. It's something I've always wanted to do, start a company, and it's always been in my career track. At one point in time, I went to business school as kind of to lay the groundwork for having that well-rounded background between business and engineering. And I think I like the challenge of it, because it's not only a matter of understanding a market to the point that you understand a problem that has a massive need that's being underserved, and then, as you said, the courage of leaving a company like Microsoft that I had a great role there and a lot of respect for the company, so that was a hard decision. But then starting to tackle the problem, generating a community around the problem that you're trying to solve. And actually, some of the parts that are most exciting me are around building the team. And then once you get the start of a great team, product starts coming out, and then you get into the phase where you have to have this beautiful product that surprises and delights and excites its users. So the entire journey I've considered to be a lot of small pieces that all are additive, and kind of getting that chemistry right is really hard. So that to me is the challenge of starting a tech company.
So, we were talking before we went on air about the edge and trying to define it. So we won't ask you to define it, but where does your organization fit? Okay, what is that solution that you bring to the edge world?
That's a great point. I think definitions in this space do matter. We're specifically solving a very thin but extremely wide problem in the technical stack for devices that live outside of a data center. Specifically, what we're doing is building an open source developer tool that allows developers to easily add authenticated connections and then messages between devices and services or cloud endpoints.
That's interesting. And how long have you been running the business now?
Almost 2 years.
So what's exciting you most in business? As we're sitting here in Silicon Valley now, what's most exciting for you?
It's building the team. As I said, I started my career in professional sports, and I had the privilege of being on several extremely high-performing teams and one of the things I really like about professional sports is when you're building a professional sports team, you're looking for the very best people for specific roles. And that's what we're doing at Occam. We're building a world-class team, people with extremely deep technical experiences from all sorts of different backgrounds, and it's really exciting to see that all come together.
So, what's the vision for the business over the next 3 years?
Well, the vision goes much further than just 3 years, and it's one of the things that's so exciting about partnering with Future Ventures and Marianne and Steve. We are solving a massive scale problem to the point where I would even say the problem we're solving doesn't work at small scale. We're talking about a problem with billions of devices, hundreds of billions of applications, and millions of developers. So we have our sights on a point in time very far out in the future where we're trying to bring devices together so they can autonomously connect, authenticate a trustful relationship with each other, and then send end-to-end encrypted messages between each other. Okay,
and I'm going to bring Marianne in from Future Ventures. Great to have you alongside, and it's a good perspective because here we've got a founder, and here we've got Future Ventures, and the two worlds have to meet at some stage or other. What's your perspective on on the edge side of things from the funding side of things?
Yeah, excellent question. So pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. My co-founder Steve Jervis and I founded Future Ventures a year ago, and the mission of our venture capital fund is to fund world-changing and world-improving technologies, and to be mindful within that aspect of which technologies are coming, whether we like them or not, and how are they going to affect the world that we live in, and how do we work within that space rather than being Luddites and just being annoyed with particular forms of progress, but actually thinking about how do we improve that march forward. And so one of my fundamental theses is around security, because basically it's an increasingly important problem. It's a problem that will only become more pervasive as we have more connected devices, and the simple reality is you can't rely on humans. Humans are fantastic for lots of things, but they tend to be incredibly insecure. And I think that moves further back in the stack, right? So the same point that you cannot then make the onus of security fall on individual developers, which is why we were so excited about something like Occam and meeting the team there, and Matt in particular, because it really starts addressing this problem of, well, how do you just create an architecture of security that enables everybody up and down the stack to create these trustful connections in a way that's relatively low friction for everybody in the process, because that's the only way that security works, right? So our own thesis about increasingly connected edge devices is that there will be tiny brains in everything. The amount of compute that will come to the world, it's already massive and it's only growing. We have a number of investments in and around the space from companies like Mythic, which are doing very, very low power chips, which we think will even further enable the proliferation of edge devices. But as we do that, we think about it in lockstep with, okay, well, how do we then create mindful data transfer, in the sense of, like, let's not ship everything back from the edge to the cloud. Let's actually look at what we're sending and why, and how does that improve the various models. And so we have an investment in that space as well, called Bridge, which is really just a very, very early stage company, which will come out of stealth later in 2020. And on the security side, we're so proud and honored to partner with Occam and Matt and the team there, to start addressing that space.
So Matt, 2 years, so what's been the greatest challenge so far?
Startups are not easy, so there are a lot of challenges. Describing the vision to bring people on the journey with us is always a challenge, and figuring out what the what the story needs to be to get other people excited, because as I said, you can't have a product without a team. So we very much put the team first. So we spend a lot of time thinking about who we're going to have on our team and how they can help us get to where we're going. So, when you're starting off with just yourself, it's a matter of getting ideas down on paper. I started off with a white paper. That's how I found our co-founder, Mrinal Wadhwa. He was working as the CTO of an IoT company, and he was thinking about similar problems. So, a lot of the focus in the early stages was just taking those iterative steps and pulling people into the vision, and just slowly building that critical mass where we had a bunch of people pulling in the same direction.
What do you see as your biggest challenge going forward? Building a team, I get that, but apart from that, what do you really see as your biggest challenge going forward?
So after the team comes the product, and one of the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about is a beautiful developer experience and interface. If you look at the open source technologies that have really taken off in the cloud world, which is a lot of what we're modeling, how we're building our product, we think a lot about that developer experience that makes it trivially simple to democratize very complicated functions underneath it. But then also balancing that out with the CSOs or the people that want to do the deep dive analysis on our code base to make sure that our ideas and our methods are understandable at a deeply technical level so people can certify and put the rubber stamp on the code base, again, with it balanced at this very simple, beautiful user experience for the developers. Because particularly if you look at what has happened in the cloud space, and I could go into further detail about how I think this is going to proliferate out to the edge, but in the cloud world, and when you're when organizations are building software stacks, a lot of the discrete technical decisions are made by individual developers. So there is this push and pull between our buyer is an enterprise, but our consumer is an individual developer that is empowered to make purchase decisions. And balancing all of those aspects of our product is something that we spend a lot of time on. And I think that is kind of, if they say the devil's in the details, that is one of the details that we need to get right.
What advice would you give someone that's sort of like you were 2 years ago, that thinking about entering this space, the edge space?
The edge space?
Has a great idea, and having sort of taken those first 2 years.
Yeah, I think that it's the same advice I give to anyone that's interested in technology. I think that one of the great things about technology is it moves at such a fast pace. It's very easy, in my opinion. Maybe even the easiest path is just to start at the front of the line. There are life cycles to all of these different technologies, and there are certain new technologies that are coming out, and if you just start with those, you quickly can get to know the community, you can adopt the best practices, become an expert in it, and then drive innovation forward. Obviously, as those technologies move along, you get to that kind of middle mass of people where people with then build careers in those new areas. But my advice is pick something new and exciting and go after it. Concurrently to this event happening here at the Computer History Museum, just down the street is the RISC-V Summit, and that's a technology that I'm extremely excited about. And if you look at the people that are at that event, RISC-V as an instruction set is going to have a major change to the semiconductor industry, and there's a lot of energy around that space right now. So I mean, that's just one example, but my advice would be to go pick something new and just dive straight into it.
What's the best piece of advice you've received?
I am. I could, the Reid Hoffman-ism about infinite learning. I seek advice from anyone that will give it to me. So I feel like I've gotten a lot and had a lot of great mentors in my career. Probably the one that's most applicable to what we're doing at Occam was some advice I got from Philippe Kahn. He was the CEO and founder of Borland Software in the 80s and invented the camera phone and did some other exciting things. I had the privilege about 10 years ago to do a bunch of sailing with him and built some instrumentation systems for some of his boats that he set some ocean crossing records with. And he sat me down one day and basically said, Matt, you're doing well at the sailing thing, but if you want to do something really hard, go start a tech company. And I remember thinking of it as, almost like I was standing on top of a hill and there was a mountain in the distance. And, it was a good pep talk for getting me off the hill I was standing on and realized I had to cross the desert and, do 16 other things first before I could start climbing this mountain. So he really, that day, despite the fact that
you went from a sailing ship to a desert. So
I know.
It's interesting.
I'm good at metaphors. I haven't given any of my baseball metaphors yet. Yeah. So that was a great piece of sage advice from someone that I really respect in the technology space.
Just some quick questions with suitably quick answers. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
I don't know. Maybe I'd still be sailing if I hadn't listened to Philippe that day. I do like sailing a lot, and it was a big part of my life for a while. But I'm pretty happy where I currently am.
What books are you currently reading or listening to or whatever?
I just finished Ben Horowitz' new book, What You Are Is What You Do, and I love that book. I really liked his first book. I think I was one of the people, and actually I've probably read his first book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, at least 3 times now. And I think I get something different out of it every time. It was actually something I read right as I was starting Occam. And I think it's one of those, it's a good acid test for, if you read the book and go, oh gosh, that sounds horrible. Or if you read the book and go, oh, this sounds awesome. I can't wait to do this. It's just like this. He has all these great anecdotes of just, he's a great storyteller from using historical events. But what I really liked about his new book, it ties into a lot of where our current thinking is internally at Occam. The first product we shipped at Occam was our values, and it was thinking about my experience with professional sports teams and how I wanted to build the team at Occam and kind of what our ethos would be about. I was on a short flight and landing at SFO, and I pulled out my notebook and wrote down a bunch of stream of consciousness over 3 or 4 pages and distilled that down into these 3 values around simplicity, the team, and product. And what I realized after I did that, there was something that just wasn't quite right about it. And I realized, I need to now explain what everyone, now what? We have written down these values. What do they mean? So I then proceeded to follow that up with a series of slide decks that essentially explained, how we should actually run the organization based on these values. And the thing that his book really crystallized for me is this idea that values are what you believe and virtues are what you do. And I feel like I was trying to cross that chasm, but didn't quite have it in that soundbite. So over the holidays, I'm going to make a major addition to our values and explicitly describe them as what we believe, and then transform them into the virtues. So what we should actually be doing, because that's actually what matters.
Okay. Are you a morning or a night person?
It's funny, I used to be a night person. I'm quickly turning into a morning person. I don't know what's happening with me.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
Probably grit. I really like that word because I think it both captures like a long-term vision and commitment to some certain goal, but then just this also kind of persistent, just keep taking the next step forward until you get there and solving problems as they come. So I really like that word.
What's keeping you up at night? Maybe nothing.
I actually sleep really well. I'm a pro sleeper. If someone gives me the opportunity to go to sleep, I can fall asleep in about 20 seconds. So I think that goes back to my offshore sailing background, where if you had 20 minutes, you used it to sleep. So I don't have problems sleeping.
And what's your most favorite place in the world?
I guess that since we're talking about the ocean, I do like the ocean. I like doing things in the mountains and lots of world travel, but I'm very happy when I'm on or in the water.
That's about it in terms of the session. But I always like people to be able to get a hold of you. So because your responses throw up questions, and it's all about this community that's sort of whirring this edge computing thing. So how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because we are building a community at Occam. So our website is Occam, OCKAM.io. We're very Googleable, but on our website there are a couple different ways of getting in touch with us. There's links there to find us on Twitter. We're fairly active and responsive there, but even more so, we have a open source community that is emerging, and we manage that through Slack right now, and there's also a link on our website there. It's a totally open forum for people to talk about whatever they want. Obviously the topics revolve around security in devices and cryptography and those types of problems that we're solving at the edge, but we're very active on there, and our entire team is there, and I think we have people in, what are we up to? I think we have 16 time zones represented in our Slack channel, which kind of blew me away. I'm not sure how many time zones people actually live in, but I bet it's not 24. Yeah, so I just saw that. I was blasting something out to the community a couple months ago. It said, you're about to notify people in 16 time zones. I was like, wait, what? So that is a great spot to get in touch with us, and we love talking to people and answering questions. So we invite anyone that's listening to do so.
Well, Matt and Marianne, thank you both for kicking off the Edge Founders podcast series, and really appreciate the input. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us.